Welcome to the Reschool'd podcast, the show that discusses all the things that schools may have missed, with your hosts AJ Kuti and Jason Gordon. Hey everybody, we're back. We're excited to be here. For those who've never heard us before, we are the Reschool'd podcast, the show that discusses the things that schools may not have prepared you for. And as always, I'm AJ, sitting across from me, Jay. Jason, how are you doing today?
Doing awesome. Never a reason to complain.
What's the purpose, even if you did complain? That's what I was told.
Listen.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
No, everything here. We are coming down to the end of the semester. You got any big vacation plans coming up?
Not really. Just getting ready for the next semester to start up. I'm in a fortunate position that I still get excited for the next semester, no matter how burnt out I am with the current semester. I'm always ready for the next one.
It's complete opposite of what it was like when we were a student. We dreaded the next semester. Now I actually look forward to it. We have a beach trip planned for the family coming up, and then right afterwards, it kind of just connects right in with my youngest brother's bachelor party. So we're gonna be having fun for that. We're gonna stay at the beach. So,
well, congrats to him.
Oh yeah, well, congrats and condolences all at the same time. Last episode, we talked about the life plan and the importance of having a life plan, and we also realized that we're going to need to do a second part of that topic. And so we will be finding out a good time to add that, and then just kind of add it to the tail end of it. This episode, we're going to be talking about motivation. We're going to be talking about how to find motivation, what motivation is, and hopefully just how to maintain it. I think it's a pretty big thing that needs to be discussed regarding motivation. So, Jason, you good for that?
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Cool.
Before we jump in, though, I want to remind everybody to visit our website, Reschool'd. That's Reschool with a D, not an ED.com. And check us out on the social media profiles, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. We are Reschool'd Pod. And then, of course, on your favorite podcasting apps, Apple, Spotify, Google, you'll find us there. Like us, get notifications when we upload a new episode if you're so inclined.
Yeah, and please, if you like what you hear and you want to support the show, please leave us a 5-star review. That would help us out tremendously. Also, leave us questions, future topic ideas, and if nothing else, just let us know any successes that you're having on your life. We want to celebrate those with you. We want to build a community of celebrating the good things that are going on. So hopefully you will utilize that, and we'll start to bring those forward to everyone and start celebrating them on air. But today, again, we're going to be talking about motivation. And so our quick question, which is dealing with motivation, I love it. Jay, have you ever seen those posters that have those inspirational quotes on it? It usually has some pretty picture on it or something like that.
Oh, I love them. I have a lot of, memes come across my social media profiles on Twitter and whatnot. And yeah, absolutely. I love them.
All right. So the quick question today is, what is your favorite motivational quote of all times?
No question. It is that one from the movie Gladiator,
of
right?
Course.
Where he's in front of the army and he says, death comes to us all. What we do in life echoes in eternity. And then he strength and honor, but that aspect of really it's just that carpe diem message, go out there and make it happen.
Absolutely.
What about you, AJ?
Mine is from Henry Ford, and I think it's a pretty known one.
Oh, I know which one you're going to say.
Yeah, he says, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right.
Absolutely. I love that quotation.
And
it's great.
I just, like, when the first time I heard it, I was thinking, I don't think they're finished with the quote. And then I got to thinking about it. I meant, man, that is an unreal quote. Like, to be able to put it into perspective of, it's all about what you think. And if you think you can't, you're not going to be able to. There's no question.
Yeah.
But if you think you can, then you're already in the right direction.
I read one in high school by I had this little quotation book, and it had one by Kevin Costner in it that was the same point. He said, I never understood why people give up big dreams for small realities. Right. And of course, I suppose his success in the film industry was his dream and things like that, or his big dream. And that's a difficult career path to get into and things like that. So I don't know. It's just along the same lines, right?
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
Don't give up those big dreams.
There's so many good motivational quotes out there that people can read and impact them in different ways. And if you've never just taken the time to read some of them are funny, some of them are just downright hilarious. Some of them are very, very meaningful, and some of them are meant for you to think about. And not all of them are gonna to work within your life or where you're at in your life at that moment, but they're valid. I mean, they're and some of them are just timeless.
Yeah.
So, let's get into this topic, though. Let's talk about motivation. What
Okay.
if I was gonna ask you, how would you define motivation? What is motivation?
So there's, the textbook approach, and I teach in management. I teach some courses in management, and the topic of motivation comes up a good bit, right? And it's obviously linked back to psychology. I'm not a psychologist, right? But if I define motivation, it's the inspiration in a given direction. Okay.
Okay,
So whatever animates you in a given direction.
makes sense. Yeah, I look at motivation as that driving force to help propel you further than you are now. In that, I can do things and as many of us probably have already done, we get to a point where we feel we're done. We're finished. I've got to this point and maybe this point is just good enough. And
Hmm.
the motivation is that driving force to get me past that point, get me back on the tracks moving forward to say, okay, reset. All right, let's keep going forward. And that motivation a lot of times is what's needed to excel and not just meet that standard. At least in my life, it has been.
That makes complete sense. I mean, I think any adaptation of the understanding of driving force, something that is an inspiration to you, something that gets you moving in a direction, right?
Yeah.
All of that is incorporated under that aegis of motivation.
And it's amazing how many different times the motivating factor changes throughout your life.
Oh yeah,
I mean, I
uh,
remember growing up, my motivating factor was having fun. When you're younger, it's all about having fun, being free, just going through life with both windows down. You head out the window and just having a ball. And then you get married and you have kids, and the perspective of life completely flips. And granted, you still want to have fun, but your priorities change and that motivating factor changes to the point where you have your kids and you see them wake up every morning, and your sole focus now is, I want them to be happy, healthy, and grow to be, good adults.
you know, and I'll say this too, AJ. People are different at different points and times in their
Yeah,
life. I've never chased fun.
really.
No, it was maybe I have the sense of I always realized how fleeting happiness was and doing things. Usually it was doing things that just engaged me or entertained me more than fun. I loved sports just as much when I was frustrated and angry at them as I did when I was playing well and having fun, I would say, or just being on that high,
Yeah, of
that high in the moment type feeling.
course.
So, it was something different for me even then, right? We chase things differently. That I feel like we always do chase something that we believe will make us content. We sometimes believe that's happiness,
Mhm.
right? We sometimes believe it's diversion. We sometimes believe it's achieving something, right? But regardless, we are always in that never ending search. And obviously, that relates towards motivation, right? If we have this objective we're trying to achieve, then it's going to move us in that direction.
Sometimes that
So,
motivation is trying to disconnect something bad over here, get my mind off something bad over here, and move it over here.
yeah, it can
Sometimes
be a
it's I
push or a pull,
Yeah, absolutely.
right? So,
Yeah, it's and what you're saying, yes, different times, different personalities. I always talk about fun and having fun, and going back to quotes, one of the first quotes that stuck with me from a very, very young age is, growing up is or excuse me, growing old is mandatory, growing up is optional. And that's something I used to tell my parents all the time. I'm never gonna grow up. I'm gonna grow old because I have to, but
mhm.
I don't wanna grow up, even to the point where, again, with my kids, I don't wanna grow up to where I'm always that mature adult. I wanna be the kid with them and have fun and cut up with them and teach them how to aggravate their mom and those kind of things. And that's something that I have always strived to do. It's not granted, I had have, me chasing those fun times in my youth was some of it was to my detriment. And a lot of it had to do with my immaturity. And I'm not saying I'm mature now. I understand when I have to be mature. But yeah, I agree with you. It's different strokes for different folks. There are different
I
times of their life.
I struggled the other direction. I felt like I wanted or did grow up a little faster. Not early on. Early on, I was slower, right?
Yeah.
But later on, early adulthood, college, I, I took myself very seriously,
You weren't the
and
class clown, I have a feeling.
I was not the class
See,
clown.
I
I was
was. I was the one that
extremely,
I'm pretty sure I was the one that annoyed people like you.
yeah. I was, I was pretty serious, and so I took myself too seriously, and I would read quotations like, "Don't take yourself too seriously," that type of thing. It, but it was difficult. That was part of my motivation factor, right? It all went in there, right? If we get back to that textbook definition, there's a lot of psychological literature out there that says people have different internal needs and
Yep.
different external needs, right? And
That's a good
or
segue, actually.
external,
That's a
yes,
great segue is, are there different types of motivation?
absolutely. And even the categories that they throw out there that you'll see in the literature aren't comprehensive because there are too many attempts at that. But you can say that there that dichotomy of internal and external,
Sure.
right? The things that were just things that you needed from the inside, and the things that the external environment could give you that you couldn't give yourself internally. So we have these internal needs and these external factors that affect whether those needs are being met. And we are highly motivated, right, to get those needs met. And we'll put ourselves in position of looking for or striving to achieve or associating ourselves with those external factors. Sometimes, though, and this is the biggest thing I see when it comes to career paths and choices, people don't fully understand their internal needs, what motivates them, and they choose, say, a career path based upon their perception of the external environment, the career, the industry, and things like that. And they won't even understand that very well. But they'll think the fashion industry is exciting or the sports industry is exciting or something like that. They won't understand what the industry really is. But then, more importantly, though, they don't realize that even what that industry has to offer, even if they do understand what that industry is, it may not align very well with your internal needs. So anyway, that's the biggest issue I see there. And we're not going through a management lecture here
Sure.
on that topic, but it's important to understand that people are different, and there's a combination of factors there that are going to be at play when it comes to how you're motivated and what motivates you.
Yeah, I'll use this as an example because I've said it on many podcasts before, and again, my trainer's going to hate me, but I do go to the gym every once in a while. I try to go as much as I can, and you know, my wife asked me the other day, why do I? Because I've always had a problem staying consistent with the gym, and it hasn't been until I started going to this gym with this trainer that I've actually been very consistent. And she asked me what was the driving force that has made this consistency continue. And I had to like think about it for a minute because, I was thinking, wait, it's the same stuff. Actually, having doing more stuff because I actually have a trainer telling me what to do rather than having me just figure out what to do on my own or figure something out on the internet that's going to give me the training regimen that I want to do. And I got to thinking about it. I'm thinking, okay, one, I have a trainer. Two, I have a good friend of mine who I started working out with, and he works out with me. He's a firefighter, and I kind of narrowed it down to I don't go there for the purpose of, or I don't have the consistency to go there for the purpose of actually working out. my motivating factor is I'm working out with somebody and I have a trainer and I don't want to let them down. That's the thing that keeps me going back is I don't want them to go without me and then let them down because they're expecting me to be there. And these are friends. The trainer's a friend, the firefighter's a friend. These are friends that it really has nothing to do with that. But internally speaking, I just have this feeling of if I'm not there and I'm not doing what I should be doing, then I've let them down in a way.
That's a perfect illustration of the principles we were just talking about. So somebody who has the motivation of how others perceive them, people that they don't know, like you'll see that oftentimes in bodybuilders, right? People who strive for exceptional level of fitness or size or impressiveness or things that people notice, right? To get noticed from other people. They may be equally motivated or dedicated to go to the gym with you, but for different reasons. Yours is based on the camaraderie, based on the effect that it has on other people, where the bodybuilder, like, and it's a stereotype
Of
there. I'm
course, yeah.
just generalizing, right? This may not be accurate for many or even most, but it's a different reason, right?
Yeah.
And it achieves the same result. So when you talk about leadership, and leadership is oftentimes taught as a subcategory of management theory, right? And so you have to realize that you can achieve the same goals by different motivating factors in the environment based upon how people are different, right? I mean, your example of being that type of person, where with me, in anything I do, I'm highly motivated if I can see a fixed result. If I can have an output that I can see. I'm very not motivated by anything that continues on and on, right? Um,
Man, I've been
I
going to the gym for a year and a half and ain't seen the first result. Probably because I ain't working out hard, but that's a different story.
well, so like I said, but you're motivated differently,
Yeah.
right? So with me, I need that creative output. I
Yeah.
need autonomy. I need, and these are all things, so we can talk about ourselves and what we've discovered. But the most important thing I've discovered about all this is the more I get to know myself, and I'm 40 years old, but the more I get to know about myself over time, based via the experiences that I have, like having a job, and I've said this in a prior podcast that the worst job I ever had was lifeguarding. I
Not
learned
the
something about
shoveling cow
myself.
manure, but the
Yeah,
lifeguard.
not shoveling cow manure, not castrating cows, right? None of that, because I grew up on a cattle farm. Just for
Yeah.
reference, that wasn't a hobby of mine. But anyway, it wasn't it wasn't what I was doing, right? The difficulty of the labor, or how bad it smelled, or just the gross factor of it, whatever you want to call something. That wasn't the worst part of it. The worst part of me doing something was not feeling like I had any impact, no output. I like recognition to the point that I see that it has an impact, right? I don't need somebody to tell me it's great. I want to witness somebody interact with what I've done and appreciate it. So I don't need to be told, but I do want to recognize that it is having an impact. So anyway, people are different in that way. And it took a lot of trial and error to figure that out about myself. And so when it comes to talking about, I know we're going to address this, what is our advice that we have for others, it comes back to that core understanding that once again, you have to do a lot of self reflection, but does it help to have that framework in mind? That idea that, look, I have these internal needs, they're going to transcend the scenario. And you said, things change about you, right? You have
Mhm.
family, you have kids, things like that, they're going to change. Your motivations change. What that is the external environment is changing, but your internal needs are going to stay somewhat more consistent.
Yeah.
So,
Now even now thinking about it, I can see that. It's just the internal side's still there. It's just the external factors have changed to the point where my internal needs are focused somewhere else.
right.
So that makes complete sense.
And we're going to find ourselves, no matter where you are on that life plan. If you don't want to know what we're talking about, go back to our other episode on life
Yeah.
plans. But wherever you are in that life plan, the environment is going to change. You're going to have a different job. Your kids are going to get older. You're going to get older. Your hobbies are going to change. You can't play soccer like you used to, right?
No,
it's
I
good.
can't.
You might turn to golf, right?
No,
Things are gonna change.
I get winded now from walking. Not really, but it's pretty bad. It's not nowhere close to where it used to be.
Sure.
All right, so how would you suggest someone go about finding motivation? Like it seems to me like the first step of finding motivation is to really do a hardcore deep dive soul search into yourself, really.
I agree, but I'm gonna caveat that.
Okay.
So just sitting back and trying to say, "Who am I?" That is very hard. Just like in our prior episode when we talked about mentors, mentors have experience that you have not had, and they offer value in that way. Much of your understanding of yourself won't come to light until you found yourself in a situation or scenario. Until I started lifeguarding, didn't realize I hated it that much. Until I joined the Army and there was such structure there, I didn't realize that I was such a low structure need person until I went to multiple graduate schools, right? And had papers and things that was assignments that were due. I didn't realize that if you give me an assignment and tell me there's a due date, I'll wait to the last minute and then till I have enough time to do that assignment, then I'll do it and that'll be fine. But if you structure the same assignment that says this is the cutoff date, do the best you can. I'll work continuously and hard and improve it, improve it, improve it, and I'll take more ownership of it. But that took trial and error. So my advice is constant awareness to recognize in yourself what does lead to a level of contentment. And then you'll start to recognize these things about yourself internally. And at the same time, you will then begin to recognize how the external environment meets that. Do you need that pat on the back from your boss or your colleagues that says that a boy? Do you need somebody to chit chat about whatever you've done? Because the reliving it is better than the actual doing it. I've I've noticed that about most people, especially people who collect experiences, right? Who really want to brag about things and pictures are their big thing. They say they enjoy what they're doing, but I notice what they really enjoy is the reliving it afterwards, the talking about it with people who were there, the looking at the pictures and thinking back on it, because we know psychologically all experiences are better or worse in the past than they actually were.
Yeah.
We actually usually forget the bad things, right?
Mhm.
We look past them, and every experience from the past gets better. So our past life was better than it was.
Yeah.
So that same tendency, right? So they do that, right? And those are just examples.
I'm starting to feel like when people tell you to be the best you can be, you take that as a challenge, and you're gonna prove them that you're gonna be much better than they're anticipating.
I don't know, maybe that's not something I've I figured out about myself yet.
That's just when you say that if you say, "Here's a paper, do it by then," you're gonna do it, like, a couple days before, but if they say, "Here's the subject, or here's the topic, or here's the project, and do the best you can," it seems like you put more effort into that because when they tell you and this is just me doing this pseudo psychology read on you, but when they say, "Do the best you can," you're taking it as a challenge that this person is going to read what you did and assimilate it to your best. And so you want it to be the highest caliber, so they will associate best with what that is.
That would make sense. That's the motivation behind that,
Yeah.
right? It changes the amount of effort and force that I put behind something based upon, right? And I think the deeper dive would be to say, right, what is it about me internally that somebody's recognition is it the somebody's recognition that I did so well, or is it the creative output that exists there afterwards that I can be proud of? I'm not 100% certain. I don't know. But
Yeah.
once again, it's very hard for us to really, really understand what is the motivating force. So we just have to keep living the experience. But I will say, if we can structure it, if we can approach things and say, why did I like that so much? Why does that motivate me? Why do I want to do this? It's the first step in helping yourself understand what environments are externally are going to meet those internal needs. And that's where you're going to find motivation. that's where you're going to find a career path that says, you never work a day in your
Yeah.
life if you love what you do. I
That's me.
don't work. Yeah, I
That's
don't
me.
work. But it's not that I enjoy what I do. It's that I'm not necessarily having fun.
I love it.
It's oh, see, you're having fun.
Yeah.
I'm not having fun
Yeah.
most of the time, but I'm incredibly contented by it,
Yep.
which just makes me want to do it. I stay diligent in all of my projects that I work on because, right, not fun, fulfilling, and my internal needs are a little different than yours.
Yeah, the thing that when I first started thinking about a podcast, not this podcast, but a different podcast, and I was talking to my mentor that I've spoke about in previous podcast episodes about, but I would always tell him, "Well, what if people don't like it? What if people don't listen to it? What if the download numbers is not high as what I thought they were going to be?" And I know internally for that podcast that if I didn't have some kind of physical thing that I can see, which is the numbers of downloads changing for the better, then I'm less likely to stay with it. However, in this podcast, because of what this podcast really deals with, the whole premise of this podcast and the reason why we started this podcast is not to do to have, ideally we'd like to have thousands of downloads and all this kind of stuff. But the premise of this podcast and the reason why we started is to help people. It is to spread to cast a wider net on what we already do in class. And that's the fun aspect of it for me. So we're on episode 13 right now. And for those who, to kind of give you a little bit of a behind the scenes story, we've been doing a whole bunch of these episode recordings to try to get a pile of them up so we can work on our consistency and have this for you. That's why every time we say, give us your questions or give us your success stories, you haven't heard anything yet because we are still in the infantile stages. We're still trying to get the website up. We're still doing this. We're on episode 13, but we're still trying to record this and we have no feedback from anybody yet because we haven't actually published them of the time of this recording. But it's still so much fun because the thought of us helping one person overcome
Mhm.
whatever challenges that they're going through in their college or their career is worth its weight in gold for the purpose of this podcast. Would you agree with that, Jason?
Absolutely. And I oftentimes define risk to people. People, I get the question all the time from business owners. They say,
Mhm.
is are entrepreneurs risk takers? And I don't feel like I'm a risk taker. They say, and I define it for them. I say risk is the probability of a negative outcome.
Yep.
Okay, that's finite. It doesn't change unless your effort changes. But as far as like how the probability is going to be, yes, affected by external factors, but the probability in itself, given an external factor, is always going to be constant. We know that about mathematics, right?
Yep.
But the difference with an entrepreneur, the ones who go forward, they're not more risks prone than other people. That's a misperception. It's that they don't appreciate the level of risk that's there. They have more confidence either in their ability or some skewed perception about the need for the value proposition they're providing. So they don't see either. So risk, if you say the probability of a negative outcome, one thing will change your perception is the impact of that negative outcome. Like if I say, it's a 50 chance that you'll win $1 or lose $1, or it's a 60-40 that you'll win $1 and 40 that you'll lose $1. You'll take that bet all day long, right?
Absolutely.
But if I said it's 60% chance you'll win 1,000,000, 40% chance you'll lose 1,000,000, the impact may cause you to say, I can't do that, right? The potential for loss will crush me. But in theory, you should make the same
It's the same.
decision,
Yeah, it's
right?
the same
It's
decision
it's the
proportionate
same, but
wise.
but the impact
Yep.
changes it, right?
Hmm.
So for you, you say, well, it will demotivate me to not see downloads or not to see the impact on people. Then you see that negative outcome as some level of impactful. Well, you change that frame and say, look, if we help one person, right, all this was worth it. And then all of a sudden, the impact of not meeting those metrics, not becoming a widely listened to podcast, not all of a sudden that impact is changed. So all of a sudden you're like, wait, so a loss isn't a loss. Now it's still the probability is relatively constant as to whether a lot of people are going to like it or a lot of people are
Yeah,
not, right? The shows are
absolutely.
the same thing,
Yeah,
but the impact's different.
sure.
And so you're reframing it. And so suddenly, just like other people when it comes to motivation, we'll start to reframe things in terms of what success means, what is failure, and if it is failure, what's the impact of the failure. So
That makes complete sense. Really quickly, because we're coming down on the end of time, but there's two more things I want to go through. And the first one is, do you feel that there's a such thing as false motivation?
yes,
Okay.
absolutely. I generally think false motivation is adopting somebody else's perception of what a contentment fulfillment means rather than recognizing your own internal needs, accepting the expectations of others and making that your mission, your goal, following a career path because somebody else was in that career path and or because it makes money and that is not your internal motivating factor. So you adopted it from somebody else and that was a false motivation, right? You convinced yourself that the fulfillment that comes from that fulfills you when it really didn't. And I see that, being a licensed attorney, I see that in a lot of my colleagues. They are highly, I don't want to say, well, I'm just going to say it. They're miserable.
Yep.
They chose the wrong career path because they adopted a misperception about how that would fulfill them to pursue that career, and they found themselves particularly big law
I think
attorneys.
that goes across the board. It's not even lawyers. It's just there's in every career path, there's going to be people that are miserable because they chose it for the wrong reason. And I think that is exactly the answer to this question. I think it's exactly what you were just saying is that when you turn motivation, or I should say, when motivation turns you into someone that you're not, then you're going to run into the problem. If you see something, and to me, the biggest, and we're going to talk about this on another podcast. I think that's going to be our reoccurring theme now. We're going to talk about this on another podcast later on. Um, I think that is one of the biggest issues with social media is when you see all these posts and these stories and all these things of people doing these things, you're seeing the best of people. You're not seeing the bad side. And you're taking the best of what you see and comparing it to the worst of your life, not the best of your life. And so you tend to strive to be or do or accomplish what other people are doing, what you see as success from other people. And it's going to take you down a long, potentially painful road.
Yeah,
And I hate to see it.
absolutely. We're definitely going to visit the aspect of social media on
Yeah, I have
your
a lot
decision
of
making and things.
pent up aggression on that.
Well,
Uh,
we're not going to have much banter back and forth on that one
oh,
because
good.
I have a lot of pent up aggression about social media as
Oh,
well.
good. Well, let's end with this, and I think this is something that hopefully the listeners will get out of this episode, maybe even more than everything else. Everything else is very important, but sometimes people, maybe our listeners, just need somebody to help motivate them. So let's end it with this. Why don't you give a pitch, a saying, your own feeling that you may think would help the listeners become motivated? How would you motivate the listeners?
Understand yourself, and you will always be able to find contentment, period. That will not depend on other people. You can determine that.
Mine would be live life to the fullest, but understand what the fullest means to you,
That's good. I like that.
because the fullest is not the same for everyone, and you don't want to be somebody else's fullest.
Yeah, I like
So,
that. That's good advice, AJ.
hopefully, we helped the listeners out a little bit on this one. I enjoyed it. This was a good episode. The next episode, we are going to be opening up a new series where we're going to be talking about tips and tricks. And from what I understand, and talking to some of my students and talking to other people about this podcast, this is the one that they're most interested in because everybody wants to know tips and tricks to make things better, easier, or more efficient. So we are going to be getting into the first chapter dealing with note taking. What are some tips and tricks to note taking, which is going to be really interesting, at least from my side, because I was not a very big note taker when I was in school. However, now that I'm on the other side of the desk as the professor, I've actually learned some really incredible note taking tips and tricks that will hopefully help you throughout your classes and help you succeed on those tests and whatnot. But before we go, Jason, do you have anything else to say?
Just remind everybody we're just talking about these things for you. So if you want us to talk about something, you've got questions, you just want some insight, reach out to us. Give us what you want to hear and we'll talk about it.
Absolutely. Well, y'all have a good one, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Reschool'd podcast. Be sure to head over to reschool'd.com for news and other information on things we're getting into.